Hello, my name is Benita. I am a molecular cell and developmental biology major at UCLA, and I'm also a disability studies minor at UCLA. I'm a second year currently, and I'm in the class of 2023. I'm also a tutor at WhizSmart. I currently teach math and chemistry. So here is my college application journey. Let's start with the classes that I took in high school. So when I was a freshman, I took biology, algebra 2 trig. That was a combined class. So we did algebra 2 in those first three quarters, and then trigonometry right at the end. I took English, Spanish 2, and then health and world geography. Those were semester classes. So I took health first, and then world geography second. And then I did band and PE. My sophomore year of high school was the first time I really took honors classes. In freshman year, we didn't really have any honors classes that we could take, so I didn't have the ability or anything. So I did chemistry honors in my sophomore year. I did pre-calculus. I did English honors. I took Spanish 3, World Civ, PE, and then robotics. Um, I wasn't sure what I wanted to take for that last class, and I was kind of interested in robotics, so that was a last minute decision. All right, we had a pretty good robotics team, so I said, hey, let me give it a shot. I ended up not really getting into robotics at all, but it was a really fun class. My junior year, I started taking APs in my junior year. So I took AP Bio, AP Calculus AB, and then I took a lot of honors classes. I took physics honors, Spanish 4 honors, English honors, and then I had to take history like we all did. I did not take APUSH. I took something called RSJ, which is only offered at the high school that I went to. It was a class called Race and Social Justice in U.S. History, but it was the equivalent of your typical US history class. And then in my senior year, I took a lot of APs. I took AP Chemistry, AP Stats, AP Gov, and AP Microecon. Those were also semester classes. So I took AP Micro in the fall, and then AP Gov in the spring. I took AP Comp Lit. That was our only AP English class. And then Spanish 5, I continued with Spanish all through high school. And then I took a class called Biotechnology. That was also kind of an elective. And yeah, it was a really, really cool class. So my GPA down here, as you can see, I ended up getting straight A's all through high school. So I had a 4.0 unweighted and then a 4.5 weighted. If you add all the APs and honor classes up, you get an extra grade boost for those. So that's why I had that weighted GPA. So if you can take a look at kind of the classes I took a lot of APs and honors classes in my junior and my senior years, right? I took a lot of those, whereas sophomore, freshman, I didn't do a lot. My freshman year, it was kind of funky. We really didn't have access to a lot of those advanced classes, so I didn't get the chance to take those, which means when I got into my sophomore year, I was just kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm taking two honors classes. That's going to be quite a bit, right? And so I wasn't sure how much workload I could take on, so that's why I only took two. Looking back, I totally could have taken more, but I was a little bit cautious in that area. I only took two honor classes, no APs, because at that point I wasn't qualified for any APs. I hadn't taken the prereqs at that point. Whereas my junior year, I said, all right, so sophomore year was pretty easy. Let's take some more, let's load up a little bit more. So that's kind of why I did that. Alrighty. So some of my extracurricular activities that I did was I did martial arts. I've done martial arts. I've continued doing it since I was in the second grade. So I've done that, all throughout. I ended up changing dojos about halfway through my martial arts career. So I did document that on my college application. I talked about how I had a second degree black belt in Taekwondo, and then I had a first degree black belt in karate because I had to switch schools. I also did a lot of volunteering in my high school. I did some of it we had different honors clubs. So we had NHS, and then we also had something called CSF, which is California based. And so these are kind of just community service clubs. So through there, I did some volunteering, but I mostly did a lot of volunteering on my own. So for Special Olympics, I was super, super involved with our local team. And so I was volunteering for a lot of different sports and I was coaching a lot of different sports throughout high school. I also volunteered at my martial arts school, and so I was an assistant instructor for a while. And I did a lot with recycling in my district as well. So if you can see on that third bullet point, I was part of our district recycling student board. So we did a lot about documenting, what kind of waste goes into our school and everything. And so I ended up doing a lot of volunteering with them, and it was definitely a lot of hours, but it was a lot of fun, and it ended up looking pretty good on my college application as well. So that was a big plus. I started a nonprofit organization. It kind of ran from 2017 to 2019. It was something called Penny Per Mile. So with that, what I did was I had gone to India, and I decided that I was going to bike um, 2,000 miles in the entire year of 2017. So this was a couple years ago. And so I did that, and it went really well. And so what I did was I kind of fundraised as I was biking. And the whole point of the title was, if you give a penny per each mile that I did, you would end up donating a good chunk of money. So a lot of people did that. And I got a lot of money for this organization in India that I was fundraising for. So that was really successful as well. I ended up also doing a research internship in my senior year. I worked with one of the research universities nearby, and I was kind of in there. I didn't do too much because I was getting kind of busy, but it was a really good experience just kind of be in a wet lab and to learn how it worked and a lot of stuff like that. Since for most of the time I wasn't 18, I really couldn't do a lot because of liability, and I couldn't sign waivers or anything. So I was doing a lot of, stalking and all of this, and, data analysis and, some of the not so fun stuff, but it was still a really good experience. And yeah, it'll help me once I do some more research in the future. And then I was also president of a club in my high school called Best Buddies, and it's pretty much this organization that works to pair people up in friendships. So, you have a person with a disability and a person without a disability, and you're pairing them up. And so that I was the president of that club for 2 years, and that really influenced a lot of what I wrote on my college essays actually. So that was a really, really good experience as well. So if you can look at my extracurricular activities, I did a lot of different things. And the main thing that I want you to take away from this is, kind of find one or two things and just kind of stick with them. Because that research internship that I did, it wasn't super, super, I didn't spend a lot of time with it just because of timing and everything, and I wasn't old enough and stuff like that. So really figure out what you want to do and dive deep into that. Alrighty. So let's talk about the SAT and the ACT. So what I did was Khan Academy is great. They've got a lot of resources, and they really fine tune it to yourself. So if you're starting to prep for the SAT or the ACT, because the questions are fairly similar, I would start with Khan Academy. It's free, it's amazing, I love it. I also took a class in the summer before my junior year. It was about this 9-week class, so it was half in the summer, half in the beginning of school. And we met, I think, for about 2 hours each weekend. And it was just kind of this class we went through the questions, what the questions were going to be like, and we took some practice tests and went over them, all sorts of stuff like that. And that really helped me really understand what kind of questions were going to be on this test and exactly what I could do, all these techniques into preparing to take the SAT and the ACT. And then I also did a little bit of one-on-one tutoring. I only got about, I think, 4 sessions, so about 4 hours in. So that wasn't too much, but it also helped me just kind of figure out, what I really, really needed to practice and just to figure out all the different techniques and tricks to use on the test. The biggest thing I want to push is take practice tests. You got to take as many as you can and make sure you take them under test conditions. You have to learn how to take this really, really big, 5 or 6 hour test without getting stressed out, because the first time you're going to take it, you're going to be stressed. The second time you take it, you're going to be stressed. But once you start to really understand how to take this test, how to, not start to panic, then you're going to do a lot better. So make sure you find a place in your house that's going to be quiet, set a timer, say, all right, we're going to run through this whole test. I'm going to get that 10-minute break, those 5-minute breaks, and we're just going to do the whole thing for today and then see what that score is. Once you start to do that and do that a couple of times, once you start to do that, it'll take the stress out of it because you'll know, all right, this is how much time I can take for each question, and this is the section that I kind of need to hurry it up a little bit because this is my weaker section. You're going to figure that out, and you're going to do a lot better on these tests. So just make sure you take as many practice tests as you can. You're going to understand the questions a lot better once you get to the real exam, and you're just going to do a lot better itself because you're not going to have so much test anxiety. My test of choice was the ACT. I ended up taking the SAT and the ACT, and I did about 100 SAT points better on the ACT. So if you can kind of convert them, there's these different formulas that you can use. So the ACT and the SAT obviously have different, score ranges, but if you convert it to SAT, I did about 100 points better, which is quite a bit. So I went, all right, the ACT is for me. So I took it, and then I took it again, and that was my highest score. And so I only submitted the ACT to my colleges. Since my SAT was a lot lower, I didn't even give that to anyone. I honestly don't even remember my score anymore. I only, looked at my ACT score. Let's talk about SAT subject tests real quick. I took mine in March of my junior year. I only took two. I took the Math 2 and the Biology. And those are much shorter tests. Those are 1-hour tests. But you got to study for those in the same way. Make sure you're reading those books. You get those practice books and do as many practice tests as you can. Those ones are a little bit different, if I remember correctly. This might have changed because I took it a while back, but you get penalized if you miss a question, if you get the question wrong. And you get 0 points if you don't answer the question, and you only get full credit if you answer the question correctly. So that one, there's some different, strategies that you want to use. I believe one of the strategies that I learned was so there's either 4 or 5 choices. These are all multiple choice questions. So if you can eliminate 1 or 2 choices, then you should be able to either make a guess or try to answer it because you have a higher chance of getting the answer right. But if you can't eliminate any of those choices, you're probably going to get the question wrong. So don't even answer it because you don't want to lose those points. Alrighty. AP tests, let's talk about those. So I didn't take APs until my junior year. My junior year, I only took 2, and my senior year, I ramped up and I took a lot. I ended up taking tests for every single one of the APs that I took. I figured, I studied, and so let's see if I can take the test. So my study process was I reviewed notes from the year. So I had my notebook and I was taking notes throughout the year. I looked through those. I said, all right, what do I need to practice more? And then I also took a lot of practice tests, practice tests for all of these really, really big, these college board tests. You really need to take practice tests. So I took them under test conditions, I set that timer and I said, all right, 3, 2, 1, go. And I took these tests. And then because same thing I said, you got to take it under these test conditions. You got to take it with that pressure, and that'll show you how well you're going to do on the exam. So the caveat about AP tests is that some of them might not transfer to your college, so you might not get credit. For an example, I'm a pre-med, right? So these chemistry, biology, math credits that I took, all these APs that I took in high school, they actually didn't do anything for me. And the reason is, if you're pre-med like I am, you're going to have to go to med school, right? And med schools, once you apply there, they want to see that you took the class in college or in your university. They don't want to see AP credit, which means I can't use my AP credit to get out of these classes. So those classes, didn't do much for me. UCLA, the school I go to, has a history or government requirement. So you have to take some sort of US history/gov class once you get into the university. But you can waive that if you had AP Gov or APUSH credit. And I had AP Gov credit, so I was able to waive that. I didn't have to take that class. And then we also have 2 writing requirement classes. There's a writing 1 and a writing 2. That writing 1 you can also waive if you take, AP Lit, AP Lang. I took AP Lit, so I had credit for that, but I still have to take that writing 2 credit. And then foreign language requirement as well. So I was able to pass the AP Spanish 5 test, and I got a good enough score that it passed me out of taking any foreign language requirements. So that's also a plus to take these AP tests. But as you can see, for that AP micro test, for example, AP stats, it didn't really do much for me because I wasn't able to use those credits. All right, let's talk about essays. So, when I did my college application essays, I started the summer after my junior year, which is the summer before my senior year. I started a little bit late in around late July, early August, but I was able to, buckle down and write these UC essays before school began, and I finished that first draft of my personal statement as well. And the reason I did this was because I knew I was taking all those AP classes, and I didn't want to worry about writing essays on top of doing my classes. So I was able to finish all my UC essays, and I finished most of my UC application itself. I finished most of my Common App application, and I got the first draft of my personal statement done. I had so much help writing these essays because I am a STEM kid through and through. I do not like writing very much, and I don't consider myself great at writing. So I sat down and I talked to my parents, and we kind of drafted out what my first draft would be for these essays. And I talked to, college counselors, and I said, all right, this is what I want to talk about. Can you lead me to the right direction with this? I talked with my friends about it. I had my friends read my essays and help me with, critiquing and changing this and, reformatting, stuff like that. My sister has editing experience, so she helped a lot as well. I wrote so many drafts for each essay. I think with my UC essays, I got to around, I think, over 10 drafts. So it was quite a bit, but I had a lot of help, and it's really, really important. You're not going to be able to do this on your own. If you are able to, I applaud you for just pushing through it. But reach out to, your family, your friends, anyone you know. Just have people look over your essay because if you get more eyes on it, you're gonna have people catch mistakes. You're gonna have people catch, where something starts to shift and it doesn't look right. You're gonna catch all these really, really important things. So have as many people as you can look over each essay. That's part of my advice. And then the second bullet point down here says, ask others to describe you because they'll emphasize aspects of yourself that you tend to overlook. Which means, I sat myself down, I said, all right, I'm a senior, blah blah blah. I don't think there's nothing cool about me, right? And I was talking to my parents, I was talking to my friends, and they said, "Hey, look, this is something that you should emphasize. This is something you might want to emphasize. Here's something you're going to want to talk about, right? Here's this cool story that we remember that happened, Remember this? Maybe you could talk about that." And so it started, getting me thinking, oh, hey, I do have these aspects of myself that I forgot, because it's just little me, right? I don't remember myself too well. I don't think, about like all these little details about myself. But, my friends, my parents, other people, that's what they see first. And so that's what they're going to tell you. So make sure you talk to other people, ask them how to describe yourself, and see what they say. And maybe you can use that in your essay. And of course, do not try to do these essays all on your own. It's almost impossible. It's very difficult. Make sure, you get help from other people. It's going to help you so much. And then also just make sure you start early so you have time to go through all these different drafts. I ended up, I wrote a whole personal statement and I had to scrap pretty much all of it. And I started over and I had to, redo it and I did all sorts of stuff. I wrote a UC essay and I had to scrap half of it. And there's so much that, in the editing process, you're going to start somewhere and you're going to end somewhere completely different, and it's going to be great and incredible. But that's not what the starting's going to be. And you need that time to get through it. You need that time to really sit on what you're talking about and to, edit it and then go back and read it and then have someone else look over it. So don't start the night before it's going to be due, You got to start really early, start in the summer, because then you have some extra time and you're gonna sit with it a lot more and it's gonna be a lot better. And don't forget, these essays are pretty much the only way you can stand out to colleges because everything else is your GPA, the numbers of AP classes you took, all of this stuff, your AP scores and your SAT, ACT scores, your SAT 2 scores. All of this stuff is just numbers, whereas these essays are really, really, really about you. This is your personal experiences. This is something that happened to you, something cool that you did. All of these really important things that make you you. So this is another really big reason why you need to really work on these and you need to sit and take time for your essays. It's because this is the only part of your application that really showcases who you are. And having said that, you need to, don't lie on your application essays. Don't, make things look bigger than they are, because if you blow things out of proportion, these college um the people who read these, they've read so many that they're gonna notice instantly. So be yourself, be genuine, and be truthful in your essays, and they're gonna be good. So, what's most important? We talked about GPA, we talked about APs, we talked about extracurriculars, we haven't talked about letters of recommendation, but those are also important, and we've talked about essays as well. So, what's the most important thing? I'd have to say keeping your GPA up is super, super important, because the instant you start to slack, the instant you start to drop that, it's going to be really, really, really difficult to bring it back up. So keep your GPA as high as you can. Obviously, if it does drop, that's okay. Just keep working hard, keep trying to bring it back up. Um, I'm sure you've heard of an upward trend. So that means if you kind of start, a little bit slacking, you're not sure, how much time and effort it takes to really put the work in and get those good grades. As long as you have this upward trend, so as long as your GPA is increasing, you're going to be okay. They want to see this upward trend. They don't want to see a downward trend. They don't want to see you slacking. They always want to see you working harder and harder and harder. And then make sure you only choose AP and honors classes if you can put the time and work and energy into it. If you're juggling too many things, or if you need to support your household, maybe you don't want to take AP honors classes. Maybe you don't want to do that if you know you're not going to get a good grade in it. If you know you have the time and commitment and you can put the work in, then definitely take these APs and honors. But if you don't think you can, I would say maybe take one or two, and next year if you did it great, then take more. But if that was your max, then just stay there. Don't try to take too many, because if you either fail a class, if you have to drop the class, then your transcript's going to show that, and then um it's not going to look as good. And then make sure you have an extracurricular, your hobby, a job, volunteering, music, sports, anything, theater as well. Dedicate yourself to one or two things. Don't spread yourself too thin. Dedicate, maybe you're super into theater, so do that and do it well, and then talk about that in your essay and talk about how passionate you are about that. Or maybe you volunteer somewhere, do some and talk about that. Spend a lot of time just doing a few things. Don't spread yourself too thin, and you don't want to do too many things, because then you won't have time to keep your GPA up. So it's all kind of a delicate balance, but you'll figure it out. All right, letters of recommendation. For UCs, they're not as big of a deal. I believe Berkeley has some, they might ask you for them, but you don't have to submit them. Private schools, they do have letters of recommendation. There are, I think, up to like 3 that you have to give. So make sure you're making good connections with your teachers. Make sure you have 1 or 2 teachers in your junior year who can vouch for you and who can say, all right, this student was really good and here is why. And make sure, you talk to them and talk about your future, so that they have something personal to talk to the schools about, to tell the schools. So that's important. Don't put too much effort into it, because just make sure you have these genuine connections with your teachers. All right, so applying to colleges, what was most important for me was this first thing. Obviously, did they have my major? I'm a molecular biology major. I might be switching to a physiological science major, so I just wanted to make sure that UCLA had, enough science majors that I found something that I liked, as well as my minor, because I'm a disability studies minor, and that's something I'm really passionate about, and I'm really fortunate that UCLA has this minor, and I was very excited about it. So that was another reason that, I was looking into UCLA. Another question for me was what percent of pre-meds got into med school, because some of the schools I was looking at had a lower percentage, a lower rate than the national average, which meant that, if you go to that school, it's even harder to get into med school as a pre-med than if you went to a different school, let's say, if you went to just an average school or something like that. So that was a big turnoff for those schools. Another question was how many students per class, so I wanted smaller class sizes. And then what kind of resources did they have? Did they have these resources for me to succeed the most? Or, was it just you're on your own? Stuff like that. Was it a safe area? How big was the city? How far away from home? I wanted to be, kind of close to home. I'm from California, I'm from NorCal. So I wanted to be kind of somewhere in California, but I didn't want to be too close to home. I wanted to have that good balance. And then another question was, do you have to apply to get into the major? Because I know some schools have this where, if you want to be a bio major per se, for example, if you want to be a bio major, then you have to apply and they only accept, X%. And I didn't want to, commit to a school and then didn't get into my major. I didn't really want that. I wanted to make sure that I would get into a major that I liked and I had all the full chances to, take advantage of that. So I ended up applying to a lot of private schools because I really wanted that small class size and I wanted all of these resources and I wanted, that good help that I could get. And private schools are usually good at that. So I fully expected to go to a private school. As you can tell, I go to a UC, which is a public school. So stuff changed, but that's okay. I actually applied to the UCs mostly as backup schools, some of them were my safety schools, some of them were not safety. UCLA was definitely not a safety school, but I didn't expect to end up going to a UC. And then I had a few reach schools and a few safety schools as well. So for reach, target, and safety schools, you have to look at your statistics pretty much. Look at your GPA and then look at the average GPA. Look at the different percentiles, look at the quartiles, look at your SAT, ACT scores, see how you compare to, the average student that goes to whatever school you're looking at. Are you above? Are you below? Is it going to be difficult to get into these schools? Look at the stats because the stats will show you a lot and see how you compare. If you can write a really good essay, you might not need to have, the highest GPA or the highest SAT, ACT score if your essay is going to really get you in there, if your extracurriculars are really going to get you in there. So you got to look at all of these different factors, but the main ones, if you want to see, if you want to look for your reach, target, and safety schools, see how your stats compare, and then go from there. All right, why did I choose UCLA? As I mentioned, UCLA was definitely not my dream school, and it was also not my first choice. I know, big shocker, right? I wanted to go to a private school because of the small class sizes and because of those resources, but the private schools I applied to, I wasn't happy with the ones that admitted me, the ones that accepted me, and I wasn't really happy with the private schools that I had the choice to go to. So I ended up looking into the UCs. I remember I was on spring break and the UCLA, admittance came out, the acceptance came out, and I was like, cool, UCLA, exciting. I was super excited, but I was like, I'm probably not going to go there, whatever, no big deal. And so somehow I ended up with UCLA, UCI, UC Berkeley, and UC San Diego as my top choices. Since I was on the spring break vacation, we decided, all right, we're gonna do a UC tour now. So we actually, we went on vacation and we were in SoCal, so we decided to go visit all the schools instead. And so I found out that the percent admittance into UC San Diego into med school for pre-med is actually lower than the national average. That was what I was talking about earlier. So I went, all right, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to work harder than the like nationally average, school to try to get into med school. That's not something that appeals to me. I don't want to do extra work on top of the work I have to do. So most of the criteria that I was looking for were, these majors and minors, did they have what I wanted? Class size, how big were classes going to be? What was campus like? What was housing like? What is housing like? How many years of housing do you get? How far is it from my house? That pre-med acceptance rate into med school I was talking about, and pre-med opportunities as well. What kind of volunteering, shadowing, research, all of these really, big opportunities. What kind of opportunities did these schools have for me? And UCLA ended up, pretty much ticking all the boxes. They had my major, they had a really great minor. Class sizes are pretty big. My chemistry class was about 250. My current biology class is about 300. I'm taking a physics class that has about 700 students total in the class, broken down into 4 different sections, stuff like that. So they're still pretty big, but it's pretty doable because we have, these sections we can talk to the TAs. And I figured out how to kind of work around that and how to make campus seem a lot smaller than, the really massive student body. So it's worked out pretty well for me. Did I make the right choice? I think so. I'm a big fan of, everything at UCLA. I love the culture, I love the campus, I love the education, and I'm really satisfied with the choice that I made. So here's some advice for applying to college. First of all, never too early to start thinking. You got to start planning soon. Make that 4-year plan. Plan out your classes in advance. That was something my school counselors told us when I was in 8th grade. When I was in middle school, they said, "All right, here's this 4-year plan. Start writing in classes. See what you're gonna do." And I made that plan, and then I just kind of put it in a binder and forgot about it. But if I had kept that, and if I had talked to some of these sophomores and juniors at at the high school, then I would have said, all right, here's your advice. And because it varies based on school, based on school, on each school, you're gonna have different advice. So keep that 4-year plan. Keep, erasing, putting in different classes, or make, a Google spreadsheet or something like that. And keep, editing it, but keep having it until you graduate, because that's going to be super, super helpful. Figure out what you're good at and focus in on it. So this is mostly for extracurriculars, figure out what you like, figure out what you're good at, and then really go deep into that, find that one or two things and just really focus in on those, and you're going to be golden. But at the same time, don't forget to be a kid, make sure to have fun. You're in high school and it's gonna be cool. You have 4 years of your life in high school. That's like what, about a quarter of your life, which is awesome. So make sure, go make some good friends, go have fun, join some clubs, do some cool things. But at the same time, make sure you know what you need to do and don't slack off on it. You're gonna have fun, but you gotta make sure that you're also doing what you need to do, because you gotta plan for your future and you gotta make sure you have a good future. So, make sure you have time for homework, volunteering, sports, internships, theater, whatever you're doing, make sure you have time for it. Use your Google Calendar, use, something, set reminders on your phone, do whatever you need. Make sure you get everything done so that you're not super stressed out and so that you're still having a good time and you're still being a kid, but you're still learning and you're having fun doing it. Last but not least, here's some advice based on what grade you're in. So for freshmen, I would say focus in on your grades because your GPA is most important. If you start with a low GPA, it's going to be hard to get it up, but if you start with a high GPA, it's gonna be much easier to keep it as high as you can. Start looking at extracurriculars and clubs. You don't need to start looking at colleges yet because you still have 4 years to do that. But start looking at something you might want to commit to, if that's theater, if that's volunteering, or if that's, doing something or another, if that's a sport. Really get into that and do it well. For sophomores, keep your GPA high as you can. Maybe start looking for a job, volunteering, internship, do something. And then start taking, your APs or your honors if you feel ready. And make sure you start looking into the SAT and the ACT because that's going to come really quick. Start studying for that as well. And then maybe look for some summer enrichment programs or summer research programs. When I was in the summer before my senior year, I went to a really cool 6-week summer research program, and that also looked really good on my college application. But it was also a lot of fun. I was able to learn and do research, but I also had a really good time. As a sophomore, I would say try to take an extra AP class if you can. Try to take an extra honors class if you can. Try to push yourself. See how much you can actually do. Because when I was a sophomore, I didn't push myself, and I kind of wish I had. Juniors, keep your GPA as high as you can. Keep doing what you're doing. You're already in that group. You already know what you need to do to keep things going. Excuse me. You got to take the SAT or the ACT or both. Figure out which one is best for you, and then take it. Start studying. You should be studying already. Take it. I took mine in November. Most people take theirs in March of their junior year. Figure out what time works best for you based on your timeline, and just take it. Don't wait until your senior year because you're gonna be, bogged down with, whatever classes you're taking. If you have a job, you're gonna have all these college applications that you're gonna do, all these essays. So don't take the SAT late. You gotta take it early. Start researching the colleges that you like. Start visiting them in the spring and start thinking about your essays. You gotta actually start getting ready for college, getting ready to apply. And then once you hit summer, start working on your essays, and keep writing and rewriting and rewriting and editing, keep working on your essays, make them look good. And then look into those volunteering internships. If you haven't already, look for these summer programs. Start doing something. Hopefully, you found that thing in your freshman or sophomore year. So just keep going. Seniors, you gotta finish your essays, get them done, and turn them in as soon as possible. Don't forget to consider if you want to do early decision or early action. Early decision is this binding program where if you get it submitted early, then you have a higher chance of getting into the university. Early action is the same, but it's non-binding, so you still you can see if you want to go to any other school, whereas early decision, you have to go to that school if they accept you. Make sure you keep your GPA high because a lot of colleges do look at your senior year GPA and your senior year grades, and if they start to slip, then they might not accept you. So just keep a lookout for that. Don't slack off too much because colleges want to see you, finishing high, right? You got to finish strong. Make sure to apply for scholarships and you'll be good to go. So that's all I have for you guys. Pretty much final advice, just keep working hard, figure out stuff you want to do, figure out stuff you like to do. Just keep working and you're going to do great.